Welcome to the National Newspaper Publishers Association's Let It Be Known. We have the distinct privilege of hosting a trailblazer in the field of preserving Black history and culture. Dr. Jocelyn Imani, the esteemed Black History and Culture Director at Trust for Public Land, or TPL, joins us today, and her visionary leadership has been instrumental in reimagining how we connect with the legacy of our past and in turn how we shape a more inclusive and united future. Dr. Imani's dedication to reclaiming and preserving sites central to Black history and culture stands as a beacon of hope, fostering a deeper sense of belonging in our shared outdoor spaces. Now, let's delve into this transformative work and explore the profound impact it's having on our communities across the nation with Dr. Imani. Good morning. How are you?
Good morning. I'm doing well. How are you?
Doing great. It's good to see you. Good to have you. Dr. Imani, we're going to jump right in because there's a lot of great work that you are doing. And so we want to really lift it up. Your work at the Trust for Public Land has been instrumental in reshaping how we engage with Black history and culture. Could you share with our viewers the personal inspiration that led you on this remarkable journey?
Yeah, well, first, I always make sure to honor and give reverence to the fact that I am from regular, everyday working class folks. I come from preachers, teachers, social workers, folks, my family tracing back to those who were enslaved and even before, but we helped build this country. And so understanding that the people are the most important part of the democracy, that shaped the way I came into my academic training. I got a bachelor's and a PhD in history, both in history, one from Fisk University, the other from Howard University. And then I started working at the National Park Service, which changed my life. It opened up the world of public land to me, and it helped me see the nation differently. So, yeah, from there, I worked at the Smithsonian. By God's grace, I was able to do my postdoctoral fellowship at the National Museum of African American History and Culture. I was part of its inaugural staff. And all of these experiences, I've learned exactly how important it is to work with and for the people in
Right.
each of these experiences, to be able to touch the folks that are the end users and see how history and knowledge of self helps them live better lives has changed my life.
Dang, you just ran down a full Black resume. I mean, from HBCUs to the African American Museum of History and Culture to what you're doing. I mean, they talk about authentically Black. Well, good grief, there he is.
For sure.
And Dr. Imani, the luminaries of the Great Migration Garden Project. It's
Yes.
a pretty remarkable endeavor, and I see your eyes get bigger on that. Could you
Yes.
elaborate on how these sites in Chicago are bringing to life the stories of courage, fortitude, and love from the Great Migration era?
Yes. I years ago, way before I started working at TPL, I had the great fortune to see Jacob Lawrence's migration series on exhibition at the Phillips Collection in DC. And I don't think I knew about the Great Migration, but I don't think I fully grasped that African Americans risked their lives fleeing the racialized domestic terrorism of the South in pursuit of economic opportunities in the North. I don't think I understood that on those rail cars there were folks trying to strip them away because they're removing the labor source of the South to go seek their own destinies. And then, of course, as we all know, 100 years later, what awaits them is a little bit of a bait and switch. Yes, there's
Hmm.
economic opportunity, but there's also ghettos and there's also redlining, et cetera, et cetera. So that story, when I saw it in Jacob Lawrence's migration series, it came alive to me through the painting. But then the work with the luminaries of the Great Migration Garden Project will allow you to walk through the places, to go through the south side of Chicago and see where our ancestors were. One of the sites that's a part of that project is the Emmett Till and Mamie Till Mobley home, which is the residence that 14-year-old Emmett Till left in Chicago to go spend that fateful summer in Money, Mississippi with his uncle and his family. But to look around at the Woodlawn neighborhood where he was and to get a sense of that place, it brings the story home even more in a way that's really tangible, and it has a way of deepening my appreciation and gratitude for the sacrifice and the investment. And I'm sure we'll have that same effect on everybody else as well.
Yeah, you think about the migration today. What's going on today, Dr. Imani? I mean, it seems
Absolutely.
wow. Well, speaking of the now, there's also the Medgar and Murley Evers home, which holds a significant place in civil rights. How do you envision this site serving as a catalyst for conversation around civil rights and social justice issues in today's context?
I I had one of the greatest honors of my life this past June because we Trust Republic Land in partnership with some of our philanthropic donors as well as the National Park Service helped reopen the Medgar and Murley Evers Home National Monument this past June, and Miss Murley Evers came to
Wow.
the opening, so I got to meet my dear soror Murley Evers Williams, and to see the home is not just it's not just the home where Medgar Evers was murdered. This is the home where Medgar Murley Evers worked to transform the state of Mississippi. They fought Mississippi to make it better for those who are there now. And to see this modest home, it's a nice home, but it's fairly modest. And it's in a residential neighborhood still to this day. You get a sense of what life was like. And the addition that we've added this year is we about a few paces cat a corner from the home is something called Murley's Garden, which is actually where we had the ceremony, and it's native
Mm.
plants and it's fruits and vegetables that Miss Murley would have grown at the home to help with her family, to help support her family. But it's again, I just keep connecting back to the power of place. To be in the place where the thing happened, you can hear the story, but to see like where the driveway is compared to where the door is, and then when you go in the home and to see that there's imprints of bullets still 60 years later,
Wow.
and you can see in the kitchen where the bullet was, there's something special about that. I mean,
Hmm.
it does invoke that sense of sorrow at understanding what we lost, but it also, for me at least, makes me know how powerful we are.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
for that, you killed that man at his home where his children slept. You shot into that man's home where his children slept. That's how powerful that brother was. I think to see those places and those places and to understand those sacrifices, it can only spur us to act and be more bold in the future.
Yeah, I think you've underscored this point a bit, but I'd like for you to expand on it a little bit more to um, all of our viewers. Why is it sounds so important that if you have a chance to visit these places, why should we all consider visiting these places?
The place calls to you. I've been blessed. It is a blessing I do not take lightly that this is my work. But I had a last June with my colleagues, we went to the Martin Luther King National Historical Park, which is, we'll probably get into that later.
Yes.
It's one of our signature sites, but the superintendent of the site, Miss Judy Forte, took us to a site that's not yet open to the public, the Sunset Avenue home of the King family. That at some point will be open to the public and added to it's a part of the National Historical Park, but again, it's not open to the public. I went into the room where Dr. King was working, and something that I don't know that I would have known had I not been in the room is when you look out the window, you see his children's play set. So I could
Mm,
only imagine, oh,
right.
Dr. King is working, and how many late nights is he in this office? How many days is he tired in this office? But you can look out the window and see the children's play set that puts a little bit of a battery in his back. the place matters, because sometimes we don't understand how small a thing is or how big a thing is or how close things are together to contextualize the bravery of the story. And I'll just briefly say this is not a Trust for Public Land site, but recently I had the great fortune to visit the Du Bois birth site in Great Barrington, Massachusetts. The University of Massachusetts at Amherst owns and maintains that spot. The home is gone. The physical home doesn't exist anymore. But what they have done is bought surrounding lots for you to take a half a mile walk through the woods with waysides and images. And then there's a platform where the great room, the living room of that home would have been. I'm thinking I'm going to go and just evaluate the space, take some pictures, talk. I've been connected via email to the woman who runs the center. We'll talk later. I just, kind of evaluate it from my professional opinion. But I tell you, that place called to me, and I
Mm.
felt like a magnet kind of sit me down. And I had to just consider and ponder what a child Du Bois would have thought about. What about the home of the Black Burgharts? And I almost wept. The place
Wow.
really can change our relationship to our understanding of history in a way that just reading it won't.
Wow, it just sounds so powerful, and you do a great descriptive of it. So really appreciate that. The Prince Hall Masonic Temple, we know that's also steeped in history, having housed the
Absolutely.
offices of MLK, his Southern Christian Leadership Conference. Anyway, what can you tell us about the restoration efforts and the voices of the community members being incorporated into
Yeah.
that project?
Yeah, so again with place, the Prince Hall Masonic Lodge is on Sweet Auburn Avenue. So if any of the listeners or viewers have ever been to Martin Luther King Home National Historical Park, you really do get a sense of how how much of an Atlanta guy Dr. King was, because his birth home is there, and the church he grew up in is down the street, and then his office is down the street from that. You can walk a few paces. So the Park Service had been in contact with the Prince Hall Masons. There'd been some back and forth. Trust for Public Land was able to come in to talk to the Masons to get a sense of what their concerns are. I don't want to get to lying about the particulars of the arrangement, but I know that the Prince Hall Masons will still have access to the space for their meetings as we restore not just Dr. King's office, but their, I want to say the call letters of WERD radio station, which
Mhm.
is one of those historic Black radio stations out of Atlanta. That was in that same building. So we would at least restore that first floor to what it would have looked like in the time of King, so that visitors can walk through. They can already walk from the birth home, see the neighborhood as it was when King was growing up as a result of previous efforts from Trust for Public Land. They can go into Ebenezer Baptist Church. Then they'll be able to see the office and see what this corridor, imagine what this corridor in its heyday would have looked like. And then the Prince Hall Masons will still be able to have access to the top of the building for their regular meeting use.
Wow, just incredible stuff. In your experience, Dr. Imani, what strategies have proved most effective in galvanizing local partners
Yeah.
and communities to participate in the mission of preserving these invaluable sites?
I think for me, the number one strategy that I've always employed, no matter where I was, is understanding that even if the people are ignorant of the details and the jargon of the industry, they are not stupid. The people know what they want, they know what they need, they know what's in their own best interest. So self determination is the key for me. So, first and foremost, asking community members what success looks like to them. What does restoring the site look like? With the Evers home, one of the first conversations I had before I got involved was with Miss Rena Evers Everett, who's Medgar and Merle Evers' daughter. And it was off the record conversation where I said, Miss Rena, I'm here to be of service to you. And I'm here to make sure that your mother sees the house as she wants to see it on the 60th anniversary of that assassination. I think sometimes what's lost in the profession of history and the business of history um, is that these are real people with real stories.
Yeah.
This is, Medgar Evers is an icon, but 60 years ago, a woman watched her husband, the love of her life, get murdered in her driveway. That
Mm.
60 years was yesterday, and it's going to be
Right.
tomorrow. It's going to be every day until she lives, until she stops living, until she passes. And that, I think, so that self-determination and the sensitivity that these stories, even if they're the most joyous, if they're traumatic, if they're somewhere in between, these are folks' real lives. This is their legacy. And then beyond that part, beyond the descendant communities, because I do tend to start with descendant communities are those most directly impacted by the work. Then it comes to those external stakeholders. Who are the where are the schools in the area? Where are the donors in the story? Where are the
Right.
people who are going to steward the place long term? What are their needs? So some of it may be professional development for the longtime stewards to make sure that they have access to everything they need to continue taking care of the place in perpetuity. Some of it in some of our schoolyards work, which is more the culture side of the work rather than the history side, is a
Right.
lot of times asking the students what they want to see in their communities and in their neighborhoods and building that into the participatory design process. But I think what we will see that when people are considered at the beginning of the process, then we'll see the impact long term to be much more regenerative. And we'll see that folks, there will be outcomes that we didn't even envision once people have ownership and they have a sense of agency in the process from the onset, as opposed to just being decoration, you know?
Yeah. Wow, we mentioned earlier about your not, well, Howard University, your HBCU background, all things black. But what I have to ask, listening to you, what was the impetus for you? I mean, were your parents, were your grandparents as galvanized as you?
I
Did you learn it
I
from
come
them?
from a long line of black people who love black people.
Okay.
My great grandfather helped to start one of the earliest NAACP chapters in the state of Arkansas. My grandmother, a Spelman woman, was an educator for many, many years. My parents were in the 80s involved in anti-apartheid struggle. So they
Wow.
gave me this name, Imani. And I had Kenya dolls. I didn't have no white Barbies. I had Kenya dolls, and I was very, even when I was learning my colors as an elementary school child, it was pretty brown, you know,
There you go.
to know that I am loved, I'm special, and I'm taken care of. So that love that has been planted in me, I can only reflect back to my people.
Wow. Well, outdoor spaces, Dr. Imani, they hold a special power to foster unity. How do you foresee the reimagined sites contributing to a greater sense of inclusion and shared identity within the communities they serve?
Yeah. Well. So first of all, we know the health benefits that the outdoors has to offer. It's good for our mental health. It's good for our physical health. So first and foremost, when we look at the reality of Black life in America in 2023, our folks are still under attack. Our
Yep.
folks are still fighting. So it is outdoor space helps us breathe a little more. It's hard, I'm not a neuroscientist, so don't let me get into the reptilian brain and fight or flight, but it's very difficult for you to dream when you're in survival mode. It's very difficult to imagine a future when you don't take deep breaths regularly. So that's first and foremost. Number one is we have to get outside, we have to move, we have to ground with the earth, we have to regulate our breathing and get those health benefits that being outside does, offers. But then beyond that, there's something I learned this in my time in the Park Service. When we're out on a trail, some of those societal divisions kind of melt away. I don't want to
Mhm.
paint a magic fairyland because there's plenty of Black folks that still have engaged racism and white supremacy outside. But a couple years ago in 2020, I was in the house, and by August I was like, I got to get outside. I've been just in the house on Zoom for months, and I went to one of my closest national parks, Great Smoky Mountains National Park, and I hiked up Mount LeConte, And there were all kinds of different folks on the trail that I may not have ever engaged on the bottom. And I'll never forget when I got to the top of the mountain, I was not prepared for this hike. That's another story for another day. But I had blisters on my feet. And
Mm.
this older white couple, there was a group of older white folks that come from South Carolina. I knew they were Republican. I'm sure these people voted for Trump. I did not ask those questions, but I saw enough of the signs. I said, all right. But this man saw that I had blisters on my feet and went to his tent and got some moleskins and put them on my feet outside. When we're not in school board meetings and we're
Right.
not in traffic jams and we're not, at our jobs arguing with each other, and when we're just outside, we're just parents and children and families and communities, that offers a greater level playing field for us to connect with each other. And then lastly, when we come to those places where the truth is reflected back to us, where the stories of our shared national experience are reflected back to us, it can only when the light is presented to you, you got two choices. You can
Right.
accept it and be transformed by it, or you can reject it and continue to move in the darkness. But when we choose to accept the light shining in on us, when you know better, you do better. So we can
Yeah.
only work together to build that new future with each other.
Wow, I like that. Wow. Dr. Imani is dropping some gems on us today.
Thank
Looking
you.
ahead, Dr. Imani, can you give us a glimpse into some upcoming projects or initiatives that you and TPL are particularly enthusiastic about in the realm of preserving Black history and culture?
Yes, I will give generalities because I don't want to give specifics on stuff that we're figuring out.
Don't want to give
But
it
I will
away.
say, broadly speaking, like I mentioned, self determination is the key. Only 3% of our nation's 100,000 sites on the National Register of Historic Places tell a Black story. I'm in the process of doing research to evaluate those 3%, but my hunch is that most of those stories are slavery and civil rights
Mm.
stories. And my guess is that of those, the majority of those are probably told in a way that still centers the white supremacist domestic terrorism that African Americans endured, and not the ways that they built community, engaged joy, celebrated each other in spite of, right?
Yeah.
So I'm interested in those stories of Black people doing for themselves, working, building community. I will say I'm a Black Power historian. That is what I wrote my dissertation on. So I'm interested in placemaking things related to Black Power. Specifically, another site, I will say this site in particular, because I just left here a week ago. I'm so excited about phase two of our work in American Beach in Jacksonville, Florida. American Beach is a phenomenal site, and I'm excited about it, but I'm wary because I don't want it to be overrun with tourists who don't know how to be polite guests. But we are so excited about preserving this history of a historic Black beach community dating back to the early 1900s that was intentionally designed. The slogan was relaxation without humiliation.
Oh.
I might be butchering that, but I know it's without humiliation is the bottom half of that slogan. And when you experience it, this is such a rich community that's still thriving. And so to be able to support them in doing some work, I'm really excited about. And there's more, but none of them are coming to mind just now. But yeah, if anybody wants to find out more, if you go to tpl.org/BHAC, you can follow along on our journey.
Well, on that note, in your view, how can the broader community actively engage with and support the mission of Trust for Public Land and preserving and celebrating Black history and culture?
we need we need all hands on deck. So if you have sites, reach out to us and tell us. If you have connections, reach out to us and tell us. You have funds, reach out to us and share with us, because this work can't be done by me alone, by us alone as one
Right.
entity. This is a collective work and responsibility at its finest. So we're going to need all hands on deck. We need strong community organizations like the folks on American Beach. The Friends of American Beach are rocking. We need folks like that Friends of the Luminaries of the Great Migration. That's led by our partners at Blacks and Green in Chicago. We need those strong local partners at the table to help us do the work, to help us preserve the stories. Because with Trust for Public Land, we don't own these things in perpetuity. We
Right.
help preserve and protect it, but somebody else has got to take the role of ongoing stewardship. And of course, we always have to finance this work. It is not cheap. So if you go to, again, tpl.org/BHAC, on our website, there are ways to communicate with us. I get every message that comes there. I just don't give out my email because that's much harder for me to manage. But yeah, please reach out to us. I will get the message and I will respond as soon as possible.
Yeah, and the work you're doing with TPL has the potential. I mean, just listening to you and just understanding some of the work. How do you see the reimagine sites playing a role in educating and inspiring future leaders?
In my dream world, to be able to take students, our students, to sites that are designed with them in mind, not places that, I don't know if when you were coming up, you had to go on field trips to places
Hmm.
that weren't really for you. That feeling, I've been on a plantation field trip,
Been there.
where it's like, oh man, this doesn't feel good. My objective is to help preserve and protect spaces where American families, but particularly American children, well, not just American, all children, can leave feeling proud. You ever been on a field trip where you left feeling defeated or you
Hmm.
left feeling sad? What happens if you go to a place and you walk out there feeling 10 feet tall, shoulders back, ready for the revolution, ready for the fight? What happens when that happens? I think when our students get exposed to knowledge of self early, that they can only aspire to greatness.
Hmm.
Frederick Douglass said it's easier to build strong children than repair broken men. And I believe we do that through these sites.
Wow, I like that. And finally, Dr. Imani, before we let you go, as you continue to champion the cause of preserving Black history and culture, what are some of the challenges you foresee, and what strategies do you believe will be pivotal in overcoming those challenges?
Ooh. Well, I've referenced white supremacy a few times, but I mean, it is everywhere. It
Yeah.
is from talking to my colleagues that do the legal side of the deed work that we do when we're talking about real estate. There's historic systemic inequity in shoddy deed work, so it takes more time to do some of the legal proceedings for some of our sites. There are challenges in that our communities don't always have the same amount of human capital and financial resources to have strong friends groups to do the work of ongoing stewardship. And then, to be quite honest, in this day and age, there are folks who don't want the truth to be told. Somebody makes a profit off of lies being perpetuated. So there is an active and intentional move to to hide the truth, to
Right.
lie, and to go against this work. So make sure that we find funding sources, when in making sure that we find strong partners in an era where folks are scared or it's not in vogue. That there's so many challenges, but the thing that I know in my heart is that this is God's work. This is a righteous struggle, and we will win. So I don't worry too much about the challenges.
We will win, Dr. Imani says. Dr. Jocelyn Imani, the esteemed Black History and Culture Director at Trust for Public Land. We so appreciate you joining the Black Press of America's Let It Be Known. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate you.
Absolutely. And folks, check out, what's the website one more time for TPL?
TPL is in trustforpublicland.org, O-R-G, and then it's BHAC as in Black History and Culture, TPL.org/BHAC.
Absolutely. Thanks again. And uh, we'll see you tomorrow.